Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Aurora Airwaves. I'm your host, Jordan Bianchi, and Aurora Airwaves is where we talk about creative well-being and artistic discovery. I'm back with Amanda Bintz, my really good friend, my co-writer, just one of those collaborative people that you want in your life. Today, we're going to talk about a really important subject, which is how to put yourself out into the world. Amanda has been a champion of putting herself out in the world into the world in terms of getting publications out, but also of helping other people do the same thing. This is a topic that isn't normally talked about with people, especially creative writers and filmmakers. But it's very important to learn that as an artist, you need to put yourself out there into the world. And it's daunting, it's difficult, it can be cumbersome, arduous, and just not a thing that you might want to do. But Amanda has cracked the system. She's figured out how to make this as easy as possible. And she's inspired me through a blog post that she put out and through all the publications that she's been accepted by. Congratulations to
Thank
you.
you.
So, Amanda, I want to hear about this fantastic blog post that you put together, which isn't just like a 100-word little thing about how to submit to journals. This is a comprehensive deep dive that if people want to participate in all the cool things that are going on and see themselves as an artist, this is how they do it. So, Amanda, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm great. I've been so stoked all day to have you back on the podcast. For everyone that is listening and watching, most of our writing relationship is through the phone. We have all of our meetings in the phone, so this is a treat for me to get to see Amanda.
Yeah, face to face is not a frequent, or we're in person. It's either phone or in person, but the in person's a little infrequent too. But hey,
I
next
know.
month I'm going to be there.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
be right here in this
I will.
apartment.
I'm going to be going.
Wonderful.
Yes, yes. Going
Amanda's
to
in
be
Philly
a
right now.
collaboration in person. Yeah, it'll be
Last time I was
great.
in Philly, we were climbing we were by the Rocky statue. We were checking out the art galleries. We went to Eastern State.
Went to the
All
Penn
from place to live.
Museum, had some great stuff happen there. Great
Some cool
ideas.
synchronicities.
Yes. Fantastic
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But yes, so we do normally do everything over the phone. Um and so this is very nice. It's nice to be able to talk face to face and also just like talk to the Aurora Airwaves community, which is just seems like it's really coming together really well. I love being part of it.
A lot of good energy, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is thanks to you for everyone that doesn't know, Amanda's been a supporter from the very get go and has been a big help behind the scenes of getting this going, of getting my confidence up, and just helping me see that this is something that needs to be out in the world. And I think the, you know, we're seeing the results and the ripples of that, of why these conversations are important, of how we can evolve as artists when we're stuck to, why we need to participate in the world. And I think that, to bring it to this article and to your journey of submitting to journals,
Hmm.
I want to sort of let you take the reins with this because it's been an incredible transformation. Seeing, for me, seeing you as an artist, but also the way that I see you seeing yourself as an artist has radically changed in just the past 6 months.
Yeah. I think that's completely true. It is a little hard now to think of a world, a life before I ever considered submitting. It feels like it does feel like kind of like a pretty radical like before and after of how excuse me, I have a little bit of a sore throat allergies.
A little
Um
tickle.
a little tickle. Um I have a cough drop. Hopefully that's not too distracting. But it really is, it feels like such a radical before and after change. It and it's something that like it has almost become a little routine. So it's neat to kind of come back, take a step back
Good.
and talk about it for people who are just getting started or people who haven't even really considered it, because I think it's one of those things that becomes kind of routine and normal pretty quickly, which is why I think perhaps why it feels so intimidating to see people talk about it, because it seems like this is
Mm.
how I felt when I would see people talk about how to submit to literary magazines and how to get published. It just felt like they were talking about it from a place where they seemed like they were light years ahead of me. Like it felt like it seemed like they knew all of this like jargon, all of this like had all this publishing know-how, had already been published in like really big magazines themselves, or they had like friends who were like, the editor in chiefs of like these really fantastic outlets that, everybody, like just almost everybody who knows anything about writing knows about. And it just felt so kind of lofty and unattainable coming
Totally.
from people who it just seemed like they knew so much more than me. And so I kind of felt, I feel like we talked a lot about just that sort of imposter syndrome of just like really feeling like, yeah, but what do I know? Like, um, how am I supposed to do this? I don't know how to do this. Um, so I think it was at first a very like kind of an experience of just gaining that confidence to even try, like to even feel like, oh, this is something I can do. Like that's sort of how I started the blog post, was starting by acknowledging that even though I went to school for creative writing, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in creative writing. And I was given, and probably you were too, Jordan, we were in the same creative writing program. I mean, you were a little bit more in the film side of it, but um, I,
Oh,
yeah, you were in a lot of my creative writing stuff. Were you a
yeah, I
double
think I would have.
major?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
'Cause I
English
took,
and
I
creative
probably took
writing.
just as many, if not more, fiction writing classes if I think about it, because there were a
I
lot of
think you
novel writing
probably
classes.
did. Yeah, I think you did because I think I took more English classes than I did creative
Yeah.
writing. But so I acknowledged in the towards the beginning of the article that I went to school for this. I was taught this and I was given information about how to submit to literary magazines in my creative writing classes. I remember doing like a homework assignment on how to write like a query letter to a magazine or whatever. And I feel like I just sort of pushed it all aside. Like that's not for me though. Like that's not something that I'm going to
Mm.
do. Um and I didn't get published in the literary magazine for Oswego, the Great Lake Review. I never submitted my stuff for that. Everybody else I knew did. Everybody else that I knew in my classes.
You edited my story that
Yeah,
got
I know, and
published.
I didn't submit. I didn't. Isn't that just crazy that I
Uh,
didn't even do that? So that was where I was at.
but
That's
it
where I
speaks to
was
the
at
point.
with my writing, is that I felt at that point in time when I was
Hmm.
given that information about how to submit, how to take the stuff I've already written and submit it, I didn't actually do it. I didn't follow through with it, even though I was given all of the tools I needed to do it, because I wasn't ready to do it. Like, it was my confidence that needed the work, like my self worth that needed the work, which I think is just something that's why this article really plays so well. This is why you really encouraged me to sort of work on this article and all like really think through all of this stuff more, was because it really is, it's not about just knowing how to do it. It's
Hmm.
about becoming ready to do it.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, and we've talked about this, but I've been, gifted the opportunity of seeing your journey
Hmm.
since, I mean, since the college days as well, but really since 2017,
Yeah.
2016, 20 onward, when we really became, writing partners and sharing
Hmm.
stories back and forth and growing. And I've seen this self awareness grow for you
Mm-hmm.
of this is just something that I do. This is something that I like to do. This is something that I'm dabbling with to, oh, this does have merit. I am good at what I do. Oh, I can put myself out there. I can contribute. Maybe I can make a career out of this. Maybe people actually want to read my stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, from my perspective, I was like, yeah, like I wanted to read it from the get go. But I
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but I think everybody can say that. You know, everyone's
Mm-hmm.
always a champion. But that's the whole thing is allowing yourself to have that period of growth and not being hard on yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the way that you've written about this and the way that you speak about your journey is that, like you're saying, like you can be given all the tools and all of these things, and it's just not, you might not be ready to put yourself out into the world, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to know that it is difficult putting yourself out into the world,
Yeah.
and you do have to wait for that timing. Not, okay, I'm 30, I should have had X amount of publications out and so many films made and all this stuff. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, no, no. Everyone's life is different.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to know that the journey is the important part. So it's been wonderful seeing yours of developing as an artist and developing, because you know we talked about it in the other conversation that we had about writing these enormous projects and not putting stuff out into the world
Yes.
is a juxtaposition to putting out these micro stories,
Mm-hmm.
flash fiction, short stories. Um, what was the first story that you wanted to submit?
The first story that I wanted to submit was the first story that I wrote actually for myself after
Interesting.
not
Okay.
writing for myself for a very long time. So,
What does that mean, writing for yourself?
what that means to me is, and I don't know if this, I'm sure other writers experience similar things and other artists experience similar things, but kind of the idea of like, I think for me, it's really about that vulnerability and also trust in myself and what I like and what I think is good and what I think is cool, and following that instead of trying to do what I think other people would want me to do, or writing to an assignment, writing to a challenge.
Mm,
I think those things are great and they're fantastic exercises to practice your writing and to be able to do the writing that's like just like work, that's like kind of homework, that's kind of not fun, but you have to be able to do that in order to get good at all different kinds of writing. You have to do writing you don't want to do also. Which I
mhm.
mean, I still struggle with that. Who wants to do writing they don't want to do? But like sometimes you
Right.
just have to do the work. And I think a lot of my writing though was more doing the work kind of writing versus writing just for the love of writing, writing just for the love of like telling a story. And I think I hadn't done that since I was like a little kid. Like since I was like,
Mhm.
11, 12. I don't know if that's little kid, but I don't know. Since I was a kid, since I was a like a
Sure.
preteen,
Yeah.
early teenager, I
Mhm.
don't think I had written anything that was really for myself. That was something that I just wanted to write. I just wanted to create. I just wanted to express this idea. All of my writing that I really did was for assignments or just sort of for these writing competitions that I would do.
Mhm.
And that was great. But like this story that I wrote, I believe in 2021 is when I wrote this story. And it was actually a story, though, that I came up with the idea for back in college in like 2011, but I didn't write it. I started it and I never got farther than I think two or three scenes in. And then one day I was just sitting, it was like during the pandemic, so I was working from home and I was just sitting there and um I think I had like some downtime from my job at the time. And I was like, you know what? I actually really think I want to pick that story up again. I want to write that story. And I sat and I wrote in one sitting, like over the next couple hours, I wrote that whole story. And I know I sent it to you at the time, I think, didn't I? After I wrote The Water Girl is the story.
You wrote, yeah, you sent it to me right after, and it was a long story.
It was a long
But
story.
it wasn't like a little flash fiction piece that was a moment. There was a wealth of storytelling.
Yes. Yeah, it's a long one, and it's not one that it has been published yet, but it is the first one that I submitted anywhere. That was the first story that made me think, I think this story is pretty good. Like, I think that maybe I could get this story published. So it's kind of funny that that actually has not been published yet. But I have there's some irons in the fire on that one, so we'll see. With the
Well, I
Water
mean,
Girl.
it taps into the genres that you like and the elements of story, which are nature, feminism,
Hmm.
mythology,
Hmm.
the hero's journey in a
Yeah.
very physical world that kind of blends with the mythological.
Yeah.
It has lessons that are presented, and I
Hmm.
think for me, it always showed the physicality of life, but the reason
Mm,
why we need to like participate in the trials behind that.
yeah. Wow, that's
And
really
that was
cool.
what you were, that's what, yeah, I mean,
That's
that's
a
what you
really that's a
were.
really great. You nailed it. You got it. That's
I
great.
was there, man. I was
Hmm.
there.
You
You know what I
were.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, but that's part of the joy. Like, part of the joy. It's completely the joy of like, I think for context of like you were working on a novel that was sort of tapping into these, but I think that at the time of for everyone that likes trying to write a novel, like your first novel is so can be so difficult,
Hmm.
and you can get so frozen and paralyzed. By writing, being creative, we both
Hmm.
fell into this thing, but
Hmm.
then it was just so wonderful seeing you do something creative in this way, because
Hmm.
it was you got to be you,
Hmm.
and you got to experience being you. It's not you
Yeah.
as a writer; it's you being you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's cool for me to get that refresher of like what was your first story, because that was a big, you know, big moment for me to see, you going to the next step and for you to
Yeah.
experience more to the next step. So
Yeah.
what, what were the stories after that you submitted that you felt were worth submitting?
I could even check back in my submission spreadsheet and I could literally read them off for you.
Okay.
If you want me to. My laptop might shut
Well,
down if I
I
try to
guess I'm
open Microsoft Excel right now. But
well,
I
before
can
you
give
say
you
that,
what
that's good
I
to
just,
know though.
this is a little plug for my submission spreadsheet also, which is
Yeah.
something that you can get in the blog entry. And I like making spreadsheets. I make spreadsheets for my job a lot. I find them very helpful. And I know
You've
not
gotten me
everybody
to make
really,
spreadsheets.
what?
You've gotten me to make spreadsheets
Really?
for
Have
my
I? Wow.
Yeah, and it's
That's
actually
fantastic.
yeah, in terms of like what has to be filmed, what has to be gathered, what's type of content. So there's transparency, but it is organized.
Nice.
I think
Yeah.
it's important. I mean, you've taught me that. Like, even if it's something that you can do without getting organized in that way, it
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah.
It makes
It
it, and then
does.
if you can get that to be routine, so that's why don't you speak to the listeners about like how you get organized for submitting to these journals? Because
Sure.
that's a big thing that you kind of have to do if you want to stay sane, because this isn't always like a
Yes.
one-time thing that you do.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And you know what, actually, I think like literally I think today or maybe yesterday, Chill Subs, the like submission kind of like helper service that I
Yeah.
really like, they just put out a thing about like asking people, do you track your submissions or not? They did a poll, and
Oh.
so many people said no, like not at all. They don't track their submissions. And they were talking about it. And I mean, I think that's really fascinating because I was very like in that blog article that I wrote, that was one of the main things that I wanted to tell people about was like, you gotta get, like, you gotta use a spreadsheet. Like, I rely on this spreadsheet so much. Like, I do not know what I would do without this spreadsheet. And yes, spreadsheets are kind of a pain to set up, and they take, I think, a good amount of use before you get them to function really well. Like, I still make changes to it. As I use it, I realize I need another column. Oh, it'd be cool if I had another category in this like data validation drop down, like, or maybe I need another tab, like of a whole nother thing that I have to track because this is just getting more and more complicated. Um, because it is a lot of, it's kind of like, it's like applying to jobs in a lot of ways, where
Mhm.
if you are applying to a lot of jobs, you probably also want to track the jobs that you're applying to, because if you don't, when one of them gets back to you, you won't remember, oh, wait, what job was this? What did I say I could do? Um,
Mhm.
what do they want from me? Like, you need to keep track of all of that stuff in order to come across well, to the editors, to the hiring team, and also just to like, I think it just makes it a lot easier for yourself. You don't have to go digging for all this stuff all over again. So I would say that for me, really getting organized with this really does, really, it hinges so heavily on the spreadsheet, because on the spreadsheet you can track every single place you submitted to, what you submitted, um, where are their submission guidelines, like, when did they tell you you would hear back, how did you submit, was it by email, was it through
Mhm.
Submittable, was it Google Forms, like, and that, for example, that little detail I found I actually really needed, because sometimes I needed to find my original submission in order to see what I said to them, or because I wanted to reuse it, because I was like, oh, I remember I wrote a really good like summary of this story when I submitted it to like XYZ
Mm.
publications. What did I say? And if you know you submitted it via Submittable, then you can go into the Submittable manager and see your submission, and you can go find it and you can track it down and you can see what you said. Um, and if it was through email, then you know you need to search your email inbox. And now you can find the what you said in the email about why you wrote the story. And you were like, that was really good what I wrote there. I should keep track of that. Um, the spreadsheet has really helped me to do that. And also to know when I am going to hear back, when I can expect to hear back from a place. Because they
Oh,
might have
then you
said
know
that.
when to resubmit to other
Yes,
places.
exactly. That's how you know when
I see.
probably you're just, because you don't always hear back. Some places will say, if you don't hear anything in 3 months, assume it's rejected. Or some places will say, like, when you see the next issue go up, you'll know that you didn't make it in, or like whatever. Like, they have, most of them try to send you actual rejections and oftentimes personalized rejections, but
Mhm.
a lot of like some places are just like, yeah, you can just like, there's some places that I've never heard anything back from, and so after it's been like 9 months, I'm like, okay, I think that they're probably, I think that's probably rejected. That's a long time. Like, that's a really long time to just hold on to somebody's submission. So it's great, because then there's a couple of places right now that I am like, I know I'm going to hear back from them like any day now, because I know that when I submitted to them back in January, it said it would be June or July 2024 that you would hear back. And I captured that in my spreadsheet. And so now when I wonder, like, how is it going for, I haven't heard anything back from like blah, blah, blah review in a while. When did they say they were going to get back to me? And then I can check my spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet will tell me when they are going to
Yeah.
get back to me. So I just think it's really indispensable, if you want to
So
stay
it seems like
organized.
it helps you though of understanding where to continue to submit to,
Yeah.
because like from my understanding of it, it's a lot of the times it's finding out. what are the best types of publications for you
Mm-hmm.
and your stories. I mean, in your blog article, you say that like you originally submitted to the New Yorker, and
Yes,
then you
I did.
realize, okay, that's not probably the best way to go.
Yeah.
And it's not like there are one or two places to submit to. There are
Yeah.
tons, and
Yeah.
they can become very specific, and you can, dabble in learning what those publications offer,
Yeah.
what the writer quality is,
Yes.
what's just a cool vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
would assume like getting organized in that way, because Chill Subs is a. I mean, I've gone on it a little bit. Chill Subs
Yeah.
is a really cool place. I'm used to like Film Freeway, which is where you submit. It's similar, but it's for film festivals and
Oh,
whatnot.
cool. That's really cool. I didn't know
Yeah,
about that. I'm gonna jot that down actually. Film
yeah, you
Freeway?
should. Yeah,
Yeah, I
Film
think
Freeway.
Peter
I
would
think
like
that's
to know
cool.
about that.
Yeah,
My
it's
fiance.
it's a similar site, but it's cool that where they have these places where they can all get pooled together. But it is tricky navigating them.
Really? Yeah.
Well,
Did
yeah, I
you
mean,
find that about Chill Subs a little bit too? Yeah, like it's a little bit, if you don't know
yeah.
anything about submitting, Chill Subs database might look very overwhelming to you. Which is why I
Well, I
think
was like,
I'm,
what kind of stories am I writing? Like,
yeah,
like I'm
yeah.
like,
You really
what
have to
other?
think about what genres you represent. What are you writing? Like,
Yeah, that's tough.
it is tough. It's tough to figure out what your kind of like your niche or your interest, like that's a tough thing to figure out as an artist. Like what do you want to focus on writing? And I think if I had found Chill Subs too soon, I think maybe their database would have looked very overwhelming to me also. But I think because I'd been submitting for maybe like a year or so when I found them, I was just like, oh, thank God. Like, I have come across an oasis in the desert. Like, this is like bounty. This is bountiful. Like, all of a sudden, I thought I was lacking and now I have plenty. Like, it was like, I went into like a submitting like hyper focus. Like I went and I submitted for like 4 or 5 hours straight after I found
Wow.
Chill Subs. And then I was like, okay, it's okay. It's not going anywhere. Like you can submit to it later. Like, but it was all of a sudden, it was like the world of submitting really just opened up to me, and I realized that there were actually
Yeah.
pretty much countless options and places to submit to. It's really um astonishing, actually, the breadth of magazines that exist out there. I don't think people have any idea how many there are. Chill Subs database has like 3,000 plus, and that's not even all of them. They're adding new ones all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. So like something that I said in the article is really just like look for a little while, and I guarantee you will find one where you're like, oh wow, my work fits here. Like this is perfect for me. Like I didn't know that there was a literary magazine that was specifically focused on like anti-fascist horror. Like wow, that's cool.
You
I
didn't know
do
that?
write like anti-capitalist, like anti-fascist, like horror and speculative fiction. I should come back to this place. Like, it's like, wow, these are my people. Like these are the people that get what I am into writing. And there's some that I've seen for you, Jordan, where like I'll send them to you because I'll be like, oh, this is like
I think
Jordan's
so.
writing, like through and through. Like something that you write could absolutely be placed in one of these journals. How do you feel about those ones that I've sent you? Was that your experience that you were like, oh,
No. I think it's really cool having someone send you a journal, and I mean it's great finding one, but I feel like just for my personality, for whatever reason, it's just cool to see have someone send you a journal or a
mm-hmm,
publication. You're like, yeah, I think I do fit in this. Because it's I don't know, I find it difficult.
yeah,
I'm more of a person that likes to like Aurora Airwaves, like creating the whole place where I'm going to be presenting my work and other people. It's trickier for me to get in the mindset of submitting to other places. Um, but it is really cool to see yourself in, in a different light with other writers and other, you know, creators in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So I think that like I don't know. I think it is a dream of mine to be published in like in the Mantelpiece, that that
Yeah.
that magazine in Iceland, and I think there are a couple others that caught my eye. But it's interesting for me because it now is presenting itself as a challenge of like now to go like learn and read the magazine and like understand how they publish and what they publish and like
Yeah.
what's the word count, what's the vibe. Is it more like personal essay, is it
Hmm.
more speculative fiction that they're interested in? And then
Yeah.
I can be like, okay, these are my skill sets,
Yeah.
this is how I like to write. How do I do this so that I can stick the landing in this environment?
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's what it's ultimately what I think I am starting to aspire to, is this
Hmm.
idea of like there are magazines that it would mean the world to me to have my work published in, because I think
Yeah.
they're so cool. And like that my favorite authors, like all your favorite authors have like probably all your favorite like sci-fi and fantasy authors, if they were alive at the time and writing, they've probably been published in Clark's World. And like Clark's World is like a really, really, really cool magazine. And I really like want to write something that is geared toward them. And what you're saying is exactly right. Like, and they do say this on like a lot of the submission guidelines, is that they're just like, if you want to be accepted by us, subscribe to our magazine, buy some copies, read it a lot. But that is really difficult to ask of someone for like every single place they submit. It's kind of like, again, how I compare it to
Sure.
job interviews, where it's just like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm applying to like hundreds of jobs. I am not going to write you a customized cover letter. I am not going to like do a one-way video interview like before you'll even like talk to me. Like I'm not going to do that. Like not unless I'm applying
Or
to
like do an
way too
assignment
many
for us.
jobs.
Write us an article that we can post.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And it's
That's
just like
crazy. And
you're
that
asking
happens.
me to just like do free work for like
Right.
dozens and dozens of companies. Like no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to a copy of every single literary magazine in order to I would be spending I don't make very much money doing this. That is not worth my time. And I think there are a lot of magazines that understand that, and they're just like, yeah, that's crazy. That's not worth your time. Don't
Yeah.
like, but the ones that are really serious, the ones that really have a reputation, that publish really groundbreaking work, I think they are ones that you need to kind of level up in order to be able to be published in. And I think that's
Mhm.
okay. I think I think we've talked a lot about that idea of like leveling up,
Right.
yeah.
We have. And it's tricky because you don't I feel like when you're a young artist, you don't know what level you're at.
No. Yeah.
Sometimes you think you're like God's gift to the world.
Yeah.
I've got these
Yes.
ideas. Man, if everyone would just listen, you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, or if I could
Yes.
just finish
Yeah.
this thing, awesome.
Mhm.
And then other times you're farther ahead than you think you are, but you have
Yes.
certain blocks. We've been talking a lot, especially I've been sharing a lot about self-worth lately. That's
Mhm.
been just the big obstacle that I'm working on. And it's
Yes.
amazing that when you start to shed it, you do see what level you are on, like
Yes.
where
Mhm.
you are. But I think that you hit that, and you had been realizing, like you've been talking about, that you've been doing the writing competition, you've been writing flash fiction, you've been doing this stuff, and this is the way to get to this next chapter, this next season.
Yes. Yes. And I
What are you
don't
gonna
necessarily even think I'm quite there yet. Like I just know that
write?
that's the next step, and I think I'm getting close to it, but I'm not going to push myself before I'm ready, But I'm going to start dabbling. I like to take it slow. I like to dabble in these I don't know, these flights of self-confidence.
Well, but that's good, right? Like we talk about I mean, I talk a lot about helping the young artist, like through working at the college and through this podcast of helping
Yeah,
the young artist understand how to be cared for and how to move forward in the way that's best for them. But when
yeah,
you're out in the real world, you don't really have that as much. So it becomes this system of like you having the conversation with yourself. And like, we're in our 30s now
hmm,
and we're just learning how to do this. So for everyone that's listening,
yes,
this is like as much of a process of, learning what these other magazines are doing and learning about your writing, but also learning about yourself and how many steps you want to take at a time. Like,
yeah, yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's so true. It's so, I just, I don't know, to get back to, I feel like maybe what was the original, what was the question we were at in the article? Where were we at in talking about
hmm.
to bring it back to submitting? I think maybe you had
Yeah.
asked me what other pieces that I had felt were good enough to
Oh,
submit, or there was something else you had asked me
well,
about
like, I
the
guess,
article. Or what else do you want to know? Or what do you think
well, I
that the
guess I want to
listeners should
know.
know?
I wanted to ask you, like, for writers who are writing their short stories, they're writing flash fiction, they're getting into this for the first time. What would your advice be of when is that time to start submitting? Do you think that it should be something you should just be doing all the time to get in the habit of putting yourself out there, or do you think that you should be learning the craft until the right moment?
I think that really depends on who you are as a writer and where you're at in your journey of, you know, becoming an artist. Because I think some people maybe they do just want to like, they might write their very first story and be like, you know what, I'm going to submit this somewhere. And they might just get published, like, just like that. Like, because you probably are good enough to get your, like, I'm sure you are, like, if you have something you want to write and you are interested in figuring out how to express that, um well, I think that you probably could get published somewhere because there's places looking for everything and all different levels of writing. um I just think that you really can, if you want to get published, like, you can get published. Like, I'm telling you, like, you really can. Um, I just feel like maybe it sounds crazy to you at this point in time, but it sounded crazy to me at a point in time. But that was 2 years ago. And now I know that it's like, I've had this conversation with people, with writers who are talking about, they're like, that they've written all this stuff and they love to write and they like, and I'm like, and they're so, it's so kind of like, um, astonished that I've, maybe not astonished, maybe that feels too like too surprised or something, but like they're happy for me, obviously, and they're like, wow, you got published, like, how did you do that, like, that's so cool.
How'd you
And
find this? What did you do? Yeah.
and I would talk to them about it and be like, if you wanted to, like, you could get published too, like, you really could, like, it's some people who I'm like, even either I've read their
Hmm.
stuff or I just kind of know what they like and what they're like, and I'm like, yeah, you could get published, like, I'm sure you could. um
Yeah.
I think it's just a matter of working on that self-belief and that self-confidence. To It's also making yourself vulnerable, which is difficult, um to put yourself out there and to open yourself up for rejection. Obviously that's not the most fun. Um, but I think it's something that when you're ready to do it, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to handle it. Like, you just do it. Like, it's a little scary. It's a little bit intimidating to get started, but I'm telling you, like, it gets so much easier over time. Like today I got published and I got a rejection.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, that is awesome, even though I got a
Okay, wow, you
rejection.
lied it. Wow, okay, you're holding on to this. Wow. Okay, so what's the
Yeah.
publication? What's the vibe?
The publication is it is Orange Peel Literary Magazine. Orange Peel Literary Magazine. That's a little bit of a tongue twister to say, but they're a
It's a little-
really cool lit mag. Really cool. They did this issue that the theme is the future, and it's their eighth issue. And I submitted a sci-fi story that I had written for a writing competition that I really liked when I wrote it. I thought it was just, I was really proud of it. I thought it was really cool. And I submitted it to them, and I was really excited that it got accepted because I thought it was a really cool magazine, and they have like a really great social media presence. So they've been posting about it and everything. And it's just super cool. So
That's
that,
one thing you mentioned in the article, right? In your article
yeah,
of like when you're looking and you could speak to this more than I can, but like when you're looking to see if it's a good fit for you, see how they're representing themselves online.
yeah, yes.
Because
And
you've
how
been
they
disappointed.
represent your work. Like how are they not only representing
Mm.
themselves, but how do they
Oh,
present your work, and how do they present you as an author?
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
All because my brain's firing now. It's like if you want to grow as an artist,
Hmm.
you need to see yourself and your worth like respected and
Yeah.
celebrated.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know how to do this for ourselves and whatever, and we can't. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point of like, I'm sure you
Yeah.
saw that. And you saw that from the emails, some of the emails that came to you, and you got
Hmm.
really nice correspondence from
Yeah.
random people. Well, not random, we know where they are.
Right. Yeah, it's something that I think has been a recent realization is that I think for a while I was really kind of submitting everywhere. Like I was just like anywhere. I thought that it was really I'd always been told that it was a numbers game. And I think that's true. But I also think that it doesn't have to be as much of a numbers game as people say it is if you just do your research. Um, like, I think
Okay.
it's again the same, I think, as with job hunting. Like, sure, you could literally apply to hundreds of jobs, but if you're
Mhm.
being honest with yourself, was that job actually like a good fit and a job that you like wanted to get and like
Sure.
thought that you were
Be more
qualified
intentional
for?
about
Like
it.
be intentional. Yes, like do your research, really
Sure.
assess this before you put any energy into it because I think when I started, and I think a lot of people will have this tendency too, I would just submit to any place that I thought might publish me because I guess I just really thought that there wasn't that great of a chance of me being published. And so I
Mm,
should just go with like any possibility. Any possibility. Like if there's a chance that I'm going to get this might get published here, I'm going to submit it. And I have become a lot choosier with that kind of thing as I've submitted more and more and more. But I think it was a necessary journey to go on. So I think
sure.
that submit however you want to submit, but I realized that for me and what I would recommend based on my experience, I don't think you should submit to a place unless the idea of getting an acceptance from that place like really like makes you like get so like you're like, oh God, that would be so cool. Like if you don't like if the idea of like when you get accepted, if you don't like sit and like start smiling at your desk or like immediately like call someone to tell them because you're so excited, why are
Yeah.
you even bothering? Like,
Well, that's a good point. I mean, when we're starting off in our careers, we can get bogged down by like how we're gonna like what looks good on paper and how we can best represent ourselves. But if I totally agree. If you're not super jazzed by what you're doing, what you're submitting to, what story you're submitting, I mean that's that's a good reason to like participate in this like in submitting anyway because like
Yeah.
you're gonna see how you actually feel.
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you actually want to get published because you want to be a part of this community, or do you just want to be praised and seen? Do you actually care about the story you're putting out there?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And
I mean,
I
there's a
think those
difference
are,
probably between like what's precious, like holding
yeah.
on to it because it's precious, and you're like, I mean, you put a lot of stories out there. I think some that you were crazy excited about, and some you were
Hmm.
like, this is good for the time.
Yeah.
I'm putting
Yes.
words in your mouth, but I mean,
Oh, no, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And I think it's something that I had to learn and was something that, I talked to you about a lot while it was sort of, while I was learning it, while I was trying to figure it out, because I just feel like I didn't ever think that I would be faced with the idea of actually having to decline an acceptance. But that is something that I have now experienced because I realized that I just was like, if you're not going to actually, like, don't submit to a place you don't want to submit to. Like, don't submit
hmm.
to a place just because you feel like, I mean, why not? Maybe. Don't do that because that, like, I think you should value yourself as a writer at the level that you are at. Like, you should feel good about being on featured on their Instagram feed. Like, you should feel good to hold that print edition of that. And like, you should feel good to tell people about it. You should feel proud of it. And if you're not going to feel proud of it, I don't think it's worth your time.
Well, but so I want to ask a question though. So
Yeah.
the blocked artist might be on the right path
Mhm.
about the story that they made. Like they might have written a story in, 2 in the morning when there's aren't the distractions of the world and the aurora energy is just flowing.
Mhm.
But then when the sun rises and they're thinking about the day and they're starting to think about putting their light out there, they might be obstructed in certain ways. Were there
Mhm.
ways that you were obstructed from sharing meaningful stuff?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that I don't I think I have not been like the most recent publications that I have gotten have been the ones that I am the most excited about. The more recent stories that I have been writing
Okay.
are the ones that I am the most excited about. And I think that is something um that feels like a really good um I don't know, I guess like anxiety soother, artistic anxiety soother to realize that like you're not going to run out of like good ideas and good stories. Like there's enough out there. I mean, Julie Cameron says this in The Artist's Way. Like there's enough
Yeah.
out there for everybody. You're not going to use it up. You're not going to run out. Like there's always going to be more. So just like, and it's going to get better. You're going to get even
Did you
better.
feel like you were gonna run out?
I did.
Or like you
Yeah.
had the five good ideas
Yes.
and you
I
have to
did.
hold them until they're perfect?
Yes,
Stuff
I
like that.
did feel that way. I did. I did used to feel that way. And that was when that was the time when I wasn't writing. I wasn't putting myself out there. I felt like exactly as you said, I felt like I had to hold on to them until they were like perfect, like, and it's
Yeah.
just like I think there's also a part in The Artist's Way, I forget who the quote is from, but it's something along the lines of like, any painter will tell you that like a painting is never done. You just stop painting or something like that. Like you just like put down your
Sure.
brush. And
Yeah.
I think that that's something that has to be said too about writing because
Mhm.
if yes, I think it's like it's hard to actually finish a story and just say, yeah, this is good. It's done. I'm just going to leave it be. And you know what really helped me to move past that and to just literally just write stories and finish them was
Mhm.
doing the writing competitions. That was a really big step
That was
on
huge.
my journey to being able to submit. So I think that is advice that I would give to people who they want to get published, but they don't feel like they have anything that's like good enough to get published. Because that was kind of how I felt too. I didn't really feel like I had any stories. I didn't really have any material to submit.
Hmm.
I'd not really written anything in a very long time that I was proud of, like since college or since I was younger. And so I think that the writing competitions really forced me to just um like to put things on the page, to put words on the page, to write a story, come up with an idea, write it down,
Yeah.
and then let it go. And then just like let it go.
There
Let it
you go.
fly and you will get feedback. You might do well or you might do poorly. Regardless of how you did though, you have a new story now. And that can just be a starting place. That can be a
Hmm.
first draft. A lot of the stories that I've gotten published have been ones that started as first drafts. Like in the writing competition, when I submitted it, it was my final draft. But like it was actually really the first draft of a better story.
I mean, these writing competitions are fabulous, but especially like in the in the view of thinking that you have limited stories
Yes. Yes.
and you're given a prompt, you're given the genre, the location, and object. 48 hours, go. And
Yes.
you had it. If it wasn't for that, the catalyst of saying go tell a story, you wouldn't do it, and then all of a sudden you do.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've done the competitions a lot more than I have, and oh my gosh, the spectrum of stories, it's just hilarious. Like
Hmm.
all the different things you've had to do.
Yeah. It is.
There's no shortage.
And you too. Like I mean,
Oh yeah, the ones that I've done.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and
I got to do the
they've
firefighter
been,
story. I got to do that for
oh,
Aurora
yeah,
Airwaves.
you're gonna do
Oh
that
my
one?
gosh, no one will have ever expected that.
That'll be fantastic. For me, we'll have to do the one, the like, didn't I
The
have you
tennis.
read the like the team building one that was like the comedy one? Or did only
I don't think you
maybe
shared that one.
it was very
It was
silly.
the tennis story that you were like the
Yes,
comedy
the
that
tennis story.
you
I
were
like
like,
that one.
oh,
That one's been published. That one's been published.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I was excited about that one because I was like, wow, this was my first story that I wrote for one of these writing competitions. And it was actually it went perfectly as a
Hmm.
like as a beginning to an introduction to these writing competitions because my best friend Amy, like she just sort of was like she tried this writing competition and she thought it was really fun and so she invited me to do it because she knew I
Cool.
liked to write. We did a lot of writing related things together in college. We were writing tutors, we were on the newspaper, and we were in creative writing classes and so like and English classes. Like we really liked all this stuff and so she invited me to do this competition with her. And it was so fantastic because, yeah, it was like the first one. I got the prompt of genre horror, um,
Okay.
character a tennis player,
Oh.
um, what is the other thing about it? Oh, and subject a get rich quick scheme. And I remember I got that prompt and I
If you
was like,
ever need validation that you can tell a story and you'll never run out of stories, oh my god.
Isn't that
horror,
prompt? That's the one that I
tennis.
always give people as an example because it is just so unhinged. Like horror,
What was the story? I don't even
a
remember it.
tennis instructor, a get rich quick scheme. So the story was called Sell Your Heart, which has since been published in Mania magazine, and it is a really fun story. It's basically just like this tennis instructor. He's just like struggling with his student loans, and he
Yes.
coaches tennis at like
Chicken.
a like rich like a country club. He like coaches a bunch of like old rich ladies, and then he's like surfing the internet one night, and he gets a pop-up ad for this thing called Fit Juice that he can sell, and he will get like, he'll be able to pay off his student loans. Like he'll get like enough money to pay off his
Hey,
student loans. So he's like,
okay.
you know what? Sure, why not? I'll sign up.
Why
Whatever.
wouldn't
Like,
you?
why
Yeah.
would what am I gonna like my car is gonna break down soon. Like I can't afford a new car. Like I I don't know. I'm willing to try anything. And so he gets the fit juice, and he
Mm.
starts trying to sell it, but it goes south. It does not go how he expected it to go, and it gets a
Oh,
little grisly.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mm.
It's a little
All
grisly,
right.
but it remains funny. So I'd say it's like a like black comedy, like dark humor
Yeah,
kind of story. Yeah. And yeah, you can read it if you would like. It's out there.
that's great. I love it. And
Thank
I
you.
like that, like, I don't know, you probably experienced those moments at, like, the final hours of writing the story when you just feel that intensity of, like, oh my gosh, I just have to finish this. I have to get this out there.
Hmm.
But it feels there's an aliveness to it that I don't think we always feel in our day to day.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that, like, now I'm speaking for myself, but like, now that we're becoming more established in our writing schedules and we're becoming more, routine about it, that excitement is there every day.
Yeah.
Like, it is able to be achieved. It doesn't have to be something that you achieve once a quarter or every once a year or something.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think takes a little while to build yourself up to,
Yeah.
to recognize
Yes.
that this is something that you can provide for yourself.
Yes. I completely agree. Completely agree. I think that I've actually started to now I've started to kind of pull back from the writing competitions after doing them for I think 7 years, 7, 8 years. I didn't sign up for the most recent one because I just felt like there's a lot of stories that I want to write. Um, that I would rather spend
Mhm.
my weekend working on than like a just a kind of random prompt. But I do think it's something that I'm really excited to like have in just like have like kind of like in my tool belt as like
Mhm.
if I'm ever feeling stuck, if I'm feeling like I don't have any ideas, do one of these writing competitions. Like it's a great way to just try to like shake something loose.
My final question for you is, in the era where you weren't submitting your stories versus the era now of sharing your work regularly,
Hmm.
in the spirit of, like, holistic health,
Yeah.
right? Like, looking at when you show up for yourself and you share things with the world, um, it feels different.
Yeah.
How did, if you look at your life then, you look at your life now, how do you look at your overall health and well-being? Did it were there are you know were there ripples of, like, how this has benefited certain aspects of your life or how you view yourself differently? I'm
Yes.
curious.
Yes. I would say absolutely. And I don't know if I've really thought about it this way before,
Ooh,
actually.
let's think
I
live.
I think that you're maybe gonna see me have a little bit of a revelation right now, live on camera,
An Aurora,
because
I don't know.
that is so true. I feel like I've just sort of thought about it as like, yeah, that was 2 years ago. But then I'm also like, oh, and 2 years ago was when I got on like, when I got a new job. Like I got out of like a pretty toxic job and I got a new job that I like a lot better. 2 years ago is when I started to like really take my health more seriously and really try to like,
Yeah.
I had sort of gone on a long journey with sort of just working on like my self image, body image, um, relationship with food, like this kind of stuff, working on that. And about 2 years ago is when I feel like I was kind of like, all right, I really need to like get this figured out and really heal my relationship with my body and with food. Um, and also, it was the time when I think I started to figure out ways to really actually address my anxiety and get on anti anxiety medication. All of those things kind of happened around 2 years ago. So
Interesting.
I think that's very interesting. Um, when you think about, so what caused what, and what,
Yeah.
it's exactly what you said, really. I think it's that holistic health, the way, holistic way of looking at this relationship, um with being an
Yeah.
artist, is that if your relationship with yourself isn't good, your relationship with your artist isn't good.
Well, I mean, I remember that era for you, and it was very interesting because one by one you were becoming very vocal about I'm sick and tired of this aspect of my life.
Yeah,
Particularly the job is what we talked about a lot.
yeah,
The frustrations with it, and you seeing that you're what your worth was, and that it wasn't manifesting in the day to day. I guess the reason that I thought of the question was that Amanda, the writer, didn't change Amanda's life.
hmm,
Amanda changed Amanda's life.
yeah,
And the aspect of you that writes got to experience that. But I think a lot of times when we have these conversations, not like you and me, just in general, creatives, it's always, how did you get, higher up in your professional career? How did you become better at your art? And it's like, that's just a portion of it.
yeah, yes,
And when we're talking about stuff, I mean, okay, we're writing partners doing these awesome projects. We talk about a lot of other things as well. And if we
yes,
when we start to free up those aspects in our lives, whatever topic it is, it we start to heal ourselves, and then everything starts to happen. So it's really
yeah,
cool to see, you talk about like the 2 year point
hmm,
that things started to change.
yeah. And
What do you
I
think
think
you got tired
submitting,
of?
oh, sorry, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I guess like what did you get tired of? Like you've articulated a few things, but what do you think those core beliefs are that had to change?
I think it was really just so much of the stuff that it feels like I'm just kind of like echoing the artist's way, but it really was all of the things that she talks about in that book, of like thinking, like just thinking you're not good enough, thinking it's too late, thinking it would have
Yeah.
happened by now if it was going to happen, thinking there's no way I can make a career out of this. There's no way I can make money off of this. That's impossible. Like people don't do that. Or like, just all of those kinds of beliefs of thinking that it's just not possible. And I think it's having to actually just come to terms with the fact that, like, no, it is possible. And that scares you.
Okay, so now it's like that's fantastic. So the fact that it is possible scares you,
Yeah.
or can be. Why is fear attributed to that belief?
Because if it's possible, then you can also fail at it, but also that means that people will be able to see your work and they will be able to make a judgment upon it. If you don't
Very
show
true.
your work to anybody, nobody can say anything about it. Um, and that's why I think submitting really is, it feels so scary and it feels so vulnerable. Sometimes after I submit, I feel like I'm just like, ooh, wow, okay, that was intense.
Okay.
Like, because um, you sort of have to believe in yourself enough to put that, to submit to that place, to think you're good enough for that
Yeah.
place. You have to believe in the piece that you're submitting. And you probably had to argue a little bit on behalf of it, in your cover letter or in your like email to them or something. So you really have to put yourself out there, and then you have to accept the possibility that this may result in a rejection, and it might result in a rejection that really hurts your feelings. But that is what it like that's what you have to do. That's just like what you have to do. Like every single writer that you love has dealt with that. Like if I were to
Mhm.
talk to any, I'm sure if I were to talk to any author about their early days of submitting and trying to get published, that they would have so much to say about how it sucked. Like it was really hard and the rejections hurt, but I just kind of got used to it over time. And you do get
Yeah.
used to it. You do. You really do. Like I said earlier, today I was published and I got a rejection. And I just sort of was like, "Ugh, okay, all right. You just shake it off. You learn to just like shake it off."
I like that. I like all of it, and I think that there's something to the rejection. It's like rejection therapy. By
Yeah.
facing the fear, maybe over time you start to realize that like it doesn't really have anything to do with you and the work.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, it does feel like a little bit of an exposure therapy in a way of if you fear
Mm.
rejection, um, then you should, and you want to have exposure therapy to rejection. Submitting is a great way to do that because you will realize that there are like it's really not personal. Like so much of the time, it's really, really, really not personal. It's not about you. It's not about your work. It's not
Hey guys,
about,
Amanda Bintz submitted to us. What did she think? She was gonna. We don't like her.
yeah,
Never
it's
liked
not
her.
personal. They don't know who you are.
We have
They
no idea.
really didn't give it that much thought. Like, they just didn't like, there's so many reasons, and I talk about this in the article too. Like, there's so many reasons that you could have been rejected that had like almost nothing to do with your story. Like, the
Mhm.
quality of your story. It could have just been that they got too many stories of that length and the other ones were shorter. And so they went with the shorter ones because that was the space they had in the issue. Like it can be as simple as that sometimes. It could be that it came down to you and a bunch of other writers, and there were two sci-fi stories, so one of them had to go. Like, or it could be that they just published a story similar to this, like last issue, and so it's not fresh enough. It's just maybe if you'd submitted it at another time, it would have been fresh. It would have been good, but that just wasn't the right timing. It wasn't the right place. And I think that's what you realize once you've done it for a while is that it's really very often not about the quality of your work and um, how good you are as a writer. And it's more about just, this is why I feel like in the article I encourage all of this research and this intention, as you said, Jordan, in it, because if you just find the places that are a good fit and that they're likely to publish your work and that you want to be published in them, all of that's going to come together. It really is. Like you'll find a place and somebody will like your work. They will. Like somebody out there is going to be rooting for you and your success, and you just need to go find those people.
Well, to whoever's listening and whoever's watching, we are rooting for you.
Yes. Yes.
So everyone needs to go, if you're ready to submit or if you're just interested in learning about this whole process while you're writing your own stories,
Hmm.
go to amandabintz.com.
Should I spell that?
Go ahead.
Or I, I realize that people often do the
www.
W in podcasts. When I listen to podcasts, they're always, spelling the URLs and saying them multiple
Or
times.
they're
So let
like,
me
go to my
practice my
website.
podcast voice. So it's www.amandabintz.com, and Bintz is spelled B as in boy, INT as in Tom, Z as in zebra. That's the way that I say that. I know that's not actually the um, correct phonetic alphabet. The what is that thing called? The like NATO phonetic alphabet. You know about this?
No.
It's like that
What?
there's specific words you're supposed to say for specific letters. Like for N, it's November because that
Oh,
doesn't sound like any other word. So there's no way that
I see what
somebody
you're
on the
saying.
other line could misunderstand what you're saying. I don't say the right words for my last name for that, but that's because that's how my mom always said it over the phone. So you can blame her. Anyway, so it's amandavents.com and it's on my blog, and
Great.
it is completely free of everything available. The spreadsheet template is free to download. And I encourage you to, to comment or send me like a note or something if you submit, because I really, really, really would like to hear if it helps anybody. That would be really cool.